Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller mystery films from 2013, titled Trapped for Cinderella. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens late at night, in a silent house, which suddenly explodes into a raging fire. The scene then cuts to a hospital, where we see a woman enduring tense plastic surgery. She quickly awakens, and experiences a brief childhood memory of someone drowning. Moments later, a doctor informs her that her name is Mickey. He asks if she recalls what happened, but Mickey just remembers a house burning, and begins to sob uncontrollably. The scene then cuts to some time later, where Mickey has now recovered, and a doctor reveals that she was suffering from severe fractures, which required major reconstruction of her face and jaw. Mickey doesn't recall much about her former life, so the doctor informs her that she is 20 years old, and from London. Her parents died in a car accident when she was 9, in which only Mickey survived unharmed. After that, Mickey began living with her wealthy Aunt Eleanor, and spent her holidays in southern France. Mickey asks where her aunt is, but the doctor reveals that Eleanor passed away before the fire incident. She also shows her a picture of Eleanor's PA, Julia, who had known Mickey since childhood, but the girl doesn't recognize her. After a while, Julia, who is now the guardian of Mickey, arrives at the hospital to take her home. She then takes the young woman to London, to one of the many houses owned by Aunt Eleanor. That night, Mickey has a nightmare about the fire incident, prompting her to jolt awake. The phone begins ringing, and it turns out to be a young man named Jake who wants to meet her, but Julia answers the call from another room, and says Mickey is not ready yet before hanging up. The next morning, Mickey receives a letter containing pictures of her old friends, and she notices a boy in them, so Julia reveals that he was one of Mickey's boyfriends, Jake. Mickey also notices a girl in almost every picture, and Julia explains that she is her friend Domenica, whom they call Doe. It turns out that Doe was the daughter of Eleanor's housekeeper. Mickey wants to meet her, but Julia says it's not a good idea. She also reveals that when Mickey turns 21, she will inherit all of her aunt's property. Next, Mickey notices a solicitor's address written on the letter, and she comes up with an idea. Later, while she's out with Julia, she abandons the older woman, and leaves in a taxi. She soon arrives at the address, where she meets a man named James Chance, who turns out to be Eleanor's lawyer. Mickey tells him she got a letter from this address, so James says it was probably sent by Jake, who also works here. While leaving the office, Mickey comes across Jake, and recognizes him from the pictures. The two share a brief, awkward chat, before he invites her to his house. Once there, he gives her the keys to her old apartment, before providing her with the address. He then checks her burnt hand, and during this, Mickey begins to recall glimpses of their memories together, and the two end up making love. After they're done, Mickey asks him about Doe, and he reveals how she always used to come between their relationship. He then drops a bombshell, revealing that Doe died in the same fire incident, leaving Mickey shocked. Up next, the anxious woman asks for some water, and while Jake leaves the room, she quickly seizes the opportunity to leave without saying goodbye. Shortly after, Mickey arrives at her former apartment, and enters using the key Jake gave her. Once inside, she notices several pictures on the wall, which reveal that she used to work as a model. While exploring the house, she finds a suitcase with a tag labeled Domenica. Mickey opens it, and soon discovers several letters sent by Eleanor to Doe, which leaves her confused. She also finds Doe's personal diary, which she begins to read to learn about her life. The scene then cuts to a flashback, where we see Doe working at a bank when she notices Mickey passing by one morning. Doe approaches her outside, and introduces herself, reminding her about how they used to spend holidays in France. After a brief moment, Mickey also recognizes her, and learns that Doe recently came to London. Mickey excitedly gives her number, and invites her to hang out later. Upon returning home, Doe pulls out a magazine full of Mickey's pictures, and she seems mesmerized by her. Later, she calls Mickey, who gives her an address, and invites her to her place. Doe agrees with excitement, and soon arrives at the address, where she finds Mickey trying to do a photo shoot. But Mickey turns out to be too drunk, and eventually passes out, so Do takes care of her and spends the night there. The next morning, Mickey wakes up early to leave for work, and leaves a letter for Do, inviting her to get together again tonight. That night, Do arrives at a shady club, where Mickey and Jake are dancing and having fun. The girls excitedly greet each other, but when Jake begins kissing Mickey, Do feels upset for some reason. Afterwards, the two girls return to Do's place, where they begin excitedly looking at their childhood pictures. Mickey asks what happened to her after that, and Do reveals how she and her mom moved far away. Her mom recently passed away, after which she came to London. When Mickey asks about her dad, Do reveals that he killed himself a long time ago, which shocks Mickey. That night, while Do is asleep, she dreams about the time she almost drowned at the swimming pool, as she couldn't swim. She was begging Mickey for help and clung to her by the neck, causing both girls to struggle, so Mickey let go of her, which made Do almost drown, until Julia arrived to help her. Afterwards, a terrified Mickey ran away from there, followed by Do, and they both witnessed something shocking. This incident caused Do's mother to take her daughter and move away, after which the two girls were eventually separated. Next, an adult Do wakes up from this nightmare and finds Mickey sleeping on her. Do tries to leave for work, but Mickey refuses, and even invites her to move in so she won't have to pay rent, and Do seems pleased to hear this. After Mickey leaves for work, Do notices a phone ringing and realizes her friend left it behind. She picks it up, and it turns out to be Eleanor, who is shocked to learn that Do and Mickey have reconnected after all these years. Returning to the present, Mickey is reading all of this in the diary when she suddenly hears someone entering her apartment. She carefully exits the room, and is shocked to see Julia there, who calls her Do. The confused girl asks what it means, but Julia assures her that everything is fine since she is now Mickey. But Mickey doesn't understand anything, so she panics and leaves her apartment. Afterward, she arrives at a hotel to spend the night, but something bizarre happens when she realizes she automatically writes the name Domenica on the registry. Upon entering the room, Mickey begins reading the diary again, and through another flashback, we see the two girls growing closer day by day, and even living together. However, Do seems to be increasingly attached to Mickey, and becomes jealous whenever she sees her with Jake. One day, Do receives a letter from Eleanor, who has sent her a check for some reason. The young woman seems pleased to hear from her, and writes back, after which the two start regularly corresponding. During this time, Do tries to change her appearance to look like Mickey, and her constant presence in their lives begins to annoy Jake. One evening, Do and Jake get into an argument when she insults him for leeching money from Mickey. This upsets Jake so much that he tells his girlfriend not to bring Do anymore, and heads off to have fun with other people. This deeply upsets Mickey, and seeing her like that makes Do sad as well. Upon returning home, Do finally tells her friend that she loves her, but this only enrages Mickey. She aggressively tries to make out with Do and asks if this is what she wants, before yelling at her to leave her alone. Afterwards, an upset Do writes a letter to Eleanor, complaining about how Mickey parties all night, and expressing her worry for her. In the present, Mickey goes back to Julia, and asks what happened after that, since the diary entries are over. Here, Julia begins to tell the truth about what really happened, and why she called her Do. The scene then cuts to another flashback, when Julia comes to London to visit Mickey with the news that Eleanor's health is deteriorating. The doctor has given her no more than a few weeks, so she asks the girls to head to France, as Eleanor wants to see both of them. But Mickey refuses to go, since she doesn't have a good relationship with her aunt and doesn't care about her, so Julia slaps her, and Mickey also accidentally hits Do, which deeply hurts her feelings. Days later, Julia privately meets Do for dinner, and it's clear that the older woman doesn't like Mickey. She warns Do to stay away from such a troublesome girl, and mentions that she has read Do's letters to Eleanor. Julia also reveals that when she was 18, Eleanor saw something in her, and offered her everything, but Mickey came and ruined her plans. She then assures Do that she deserves a better life, and asks her to convince Mickey to go to France. Do hesitates, but Julia gives her contact number, and says she can help her. Days later, Mickey herself changes her mind, and decides to travel to France with Do. On the way, she complains about her Aunt Eleanor, whom she always felt neglected by during childhood, and reveals that she was actually raised by Julia. In the next scene, they arrive at the hospital, where they find that Eleanor is in very bad condition. The old woman can't even manage to speak. Afterwards, the girls return to the villa in southern France, where they used to spend their childhood holidays. The two girls then spend their days having fun cycling around, swimming at the beach, and partying. One day, we see Mickey teaching Do to swim in the sea when they are noticed by a mysterious man in the distance. In the afternoon, Do goes to a local cafe, from where she calls Julia, who asks her to be honest about what she wants. Do says she wants Mickey, but Julia suddenly states that the girl has already ruined Do's life once. It turns out that on the day Do almost drowned, the girls actually saw Eleanor and Do's father together, having an affair. Julia reveals how Mickey told this to Do's mother, and that was the reason they had to move away, after which her dad killed himself. Upon hearing this, Do is stunned, and Julia tells her that Mickey will never love her, before asking her to do something. In the following days, Do continues to be haunted by her father's death, which makes her despise Mickey more and more. One afternoon, Julia appears to deliver the bad news that Eleanor passed away last night, which leaves Mickey devastated. After calming her, Julia approaches Do, who is now ready to take down Mickey, and she asks what she needs to do. Julia says that on the 4th of July, which is Do's birthday, they will be celebrating outside, and that is the night they will get rid of Mickey. Do must disconnect the gas pipe, and set fire to the house, but the damage will be so severe that everyone will assume it was caused by a boiler malfunction. Julia asks her to do it at 1 a.m., and assures her that nothing will go wrong. After that, she will take Do to Switzerland, and then change her face to Mickey's to take over her place. Days later, the day of Do's birthday finally arrives, and we see the two girls celebrating with some new friends. During this, Do deliberately makes Mickey drink a lot, and even gives her a drug to try. They eventually return home, but Mickey is too intoxicated, so Do changes her clothes, and tucks her into bed. Up next, Do heads downstairs, where she disconnects the gas pipe in the bathroom, and closes the door so the gas will fill the room. She then lights some candles, and places them in Mickey's room. After a while, she opens the bathroom door, which causes the house to completely explode, during which Do also catches fire and jumps out of the window while Julia waits for her outside. However, after the fall, her face is completely unrecognizable, and she ends up losing all her memory. In the present, Julia says that everything worked flawlessly, but Mickey, who is actually Do, begins to freak out. She considers calling the cops, but Julia stops her, and says they got everything they wanted. Now she is the new Mickey, and after the lawyer believes this, she inherits all of Eleanor's properties on her 21st birthday. After this, the two return to southern France, where Do explores the place, and notices many pictures of her from childhood, which slowly begin to bring back her memories. That night, she finds an old car that they used to ride together as kids. Just then, the same mysterious man appears, who used to constantly stare at the girls. His name is Serge, and he compliments the expensive car, saying it easily costs 100,000 euros. He says he wants to take her for a ride, as he wants to tell her a story, which leaves her confused. The scene then cuts to a flashback, where we see Serge approaching Mickey on a beach for a chat. He tells her that he heard an interesting phone call her friend made from the cafe. We then notice that this guy works at the same cafe from which Do used to make calls to Julia in England. One day, he got curious, and listened to their conversation from another landline, and learned about their sinister plans. Serge thus tells Mickey about this, and even demands 1,000 euros for the information, which she agrees to provide. Now that Mickey is aware of the plan, she begins keeping an eye on Do and Julia. She then pretends to drink alcohol, and take drugs at the birthday party, but in reality, she remains completely sober. In the present, the girl is shocked to hear this, but still confused about whether she is Mickey or Do. Serge now demands 100,000 euros in exchange for his silence, or threatens to expose her, to which she agrees. Mickey then returns home, where she tells Julia that the man who works at the cafe is claiming to have heard all their conversations. But she assures Julia that she hasn't told him about how Julia plotted with Do to kill Mickey. Julia then states that tomorrow is Mickey's 21st birthday, so she will meet the lawyer in London, after which all the money will be passed on to her. The next day, Julia meets with the lawyer, James, while on the other hand, we see Mickey preparing to leave for London. It turns out she has recorded her conversation with Julia, in which the woman admitted plotting to kill Mickey. Elsewhere, the lawyer and Julia read Eleanor's will, and see something that leaves them shocked. Meanwhile, Mickey heads to the cafe, where she meets Serge, and takes him out for a drive. After arriving in London, she gives him the key to her car, and says he can keep it in exchange for keeping his mouth shut. Moments later, Mickey enters Julia's house and calls her name, but the place is completely empty. She eventually finds Julia near the swimming pool, looking visibly upset. Here, Julia drops a bombshell, revealing that Eleanor left everything to Do, instead of Mickey, meaning all their schemes were in vain. It turns out Eleanor felt guilty that her affair with Do's father had ruined Do's life, so she decided to leave her everything to make amends. Hearing this, the young woman says Mickey knew everything, but Julia insists she didn't, or else she would have done something to stop Do. But upon saying this, Julia somehow realizes that the person in front of her right now is the real Mickey, and not Do. And so, Mickey reveals that she recorded Julia's confession, and has even sent it to the lawyer, which enrages Julia so much that she pushes the girl into the water, and begins strangling her. During this, Mickey has a flashback of the time she and Do were in the pool and almost drowned. She also recalls the night of the fire, when she found Do right before she opened the bathroom door. It turns out Do felt remorse at the last moment and apologized, so Mickey asked her to come with her. But Do realized it was too late for her, and asked her friend to run away, causing Mickey to jump out of the window. In the present, Julia tries to suffocate Mickey, but the latter soon gains the upper hand and smashes her head against the wall. The evil woman soon passes away, after which Mickey cries, and walks away to the beach. She then swims all night in the ocean, which is final proof she's Mickey, as Do couldn't swim. The movie ends with Mickey waking up early on the beach and walking away, eager to leave the past behind. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.